Hey, good morning and welcome to another edition of. Hey, good morning and welcome to another edition of. He's always trying to steal the limelight. Always. Welcome to another edition of Nazarene Talk. We are glad you are here with us today. Today we are talking about a very interesting topic. It's kind of a dichotomy of sorts in that sometimes when the Lord is doing amazing things in our lives, amazing things in our churches, and amazing things really in our community, there are oftentimes we get a lot of backlash. And so I think there's some confusion whenever people are following the will of the Lord, and then all of a sudden, they start getting some backlash from other believers. And what ends up happening is there's a lot of hurt feelings, and there's a lot of hurt people, and that really creates division. And honestly, my very personal opinion on this is a work of the enemy in our lives, trying to bring division among the church. And so today we're going to talk about really what to do when we start to feel offended or hurt by other Christians, and how we can really bring about some resolve to that issue so that there's no division among believers. So Pastor Kevin, you and I we are no strangers to being hurt by other believers, are we?
No, I think we both have experienced it pretty heavily, I guess, in our lives. I think too, it's important to remember that, Jeremiah, you said that today is an interesting topic. I think that it is an interesting topic because it's something we don't really like to talk about much. I think all of us have experienced hurt from other Christians within our own camp, within our own team, that and we just don't like to talk about it. We just kind of slide it under the rug and not deal with it, and we kind of just wrestle with it internally and not ever really bring it to light and discuss it, and maybe even take it to the Lord and pray about it. But I think that it's something that's huge, and I think like in any family, I think about a family of we have a family of 5 in our house, and in our family of 5, sometimes there's hurt feelings. And that just happens. But what do you do when there's hurt feelings? Man, you address them, and you don't just slide them under the rug. And so I think this is a very relevant topic because it happens. And it's real.
Yeah, it's true. So let's just kind of throw out there some scenarios that might bring about some hurt among believers. I think for me and for some others that I know, one of the biggest things that has been, I guess, prevalent over the last year or two is when you feel the Lord moving you in a direction, and that your obedience maybe brings some confusion to other people. Whenever you feel like you are following the will of the Lord, and other people don't understand, and they experience some hurt, and so maybe in some respects, some words get said and some hurt happens. And so, I think that the best thing to do in those situations, because here's what happens, I believe. Oftentimes people will talk amongst themselves and never address the issue one-on-one with the other person. And so whenever there's a situation where hurt happens, the absolute best thing to do is to really just go to that person and just really talk that out. And I don't mean confront the situation in the sense of, why are you saying these things? But, approach the situation in love. Approach the situation in a way that's going to be beneficial and heal that hurt that was there. Because a lot of times hurt happens because of miscommunication, misunderstanding, or really just unmet or unvoiced expectations.
Well, and I think too, it's important to remember that when there is wrong that happens, Jesus tells us how to deal with it. When we're wronged by another person, that Jesus says this is how you deal with it. We don't have to. I think we have a tendency when we are hurt by someone to start gossiping, and maybe not even gossiping. Maybe it's true, and maybe it's just venting to somebody else, and it's really not doing anything good, versus hitting the situation head on. And Jesus says if another brother or a believer sins against you, go to that person and confront it head on and deal with it and get it out there. And I think that this is something that this is what somebody said to me. The only thing worse that could happen than only thing worse than conflict, because conflict is harder. Dealing with conflict is hard. It's hard to go to a person and say, "Hey, you wronged me." But the only thing worse than that situation is what could happen is if you don't deal with the conflict. Yeah. And so it's you could be carrying emotions and sleepless nights and depression even in certain areas of your life if it's not dealt with. And so confronting a person head on when there is a conflict is not even not just a great thing to do as a follower of Christ, but this works even in the realm of those that aren't even believers. It avoids long-term conflict, just hitting it head on. Now, as followers of Christ, we're going to follow Jesus, and Jesus says, deal with the conflict head on and deal with the hurt head on. Don't slide under the rug. Don't push it out of the way. Just deal with it.
You know? Yeah, that's good.
And if that doesn't work, then what do?
You go and get a third party to kind of mediate.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And so if you go and deal with the conflict head on and say, listen, you hurt me, you wronged me, and then the person doesn't receive what you're saying, and then they say that it was justified, that you should be hurt, and whatever the response may be, and there's no resolution, then you go and get a third, I think, unbiased party. Now, don't bring your spouse in, don't bring your best friend in, don't bring your brother in, your literal brother. Bring kind of an unbiased party and deal with the situation. Actually, we dealt with the situation, or my wife dealt with the situation at the church that we pastor, and there was kind of a conflict between my wife and another girl, and my wife thought it would be good to bring a third party in, and actually Jeremiah's wife actually came in and sat in on the meeting, just kind of make sure as a witness or as a unbiased kind of party to the situation, and resolution was great.
Yeah.
My wife felt like there was some hurt there coming from another person, and just deal with it.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, it took my wife probably about 3 months before she actually dealt with it.
It's true.
And so she was having sleepless nights. She was waking up early, angry, and just praying, and it could have been dealt with a lot sooner if you would just hit it head on right away.
Yeah. And so I think another issue when it comes to experiencing hurt tends to be jealousies. Jealousy is or another word for it is envy. And envy is a disease.
Yeah.
We've heard the old cliche that this person is green with envy, and that is true, is because envy can make you sick if you are seeing the success of somebody and you develop an envy about it, or if you yourself are experiencing success and somebody develops jealousy or envy towards it. And Jesus addresses this in a parable where he talks about a gardener, or a farmer rather. A farmer had a lot of harvest to be brought in, and so he hired somebody for a day's wage to come in and help him work the farm, and the work was still too much. And so about 2 hours later, he hired another person for a day's wage, and they came in and started helping, and they realized the work was still too much, and so they hired 2 more people for a day's wage. And so we got 4 people working the farm, trying to get this work done in a day's work. And finally, they needed a little bit more help. And for the last hour of the day, they hired another person to come in. And so the first person worked 8 hours. The second person only worked 6 hours. The third and fourth people only worked 4 hours, and that last person only worked 1 hour. And what did he say the farmer did? He gave the farmer paid
all of them a full day.
All the workers a full day's wage.
Which would obviously, let's stop for a second. Which would obviously, if we were in that situation, and you and I went to go work a farm for the day, and you show up and you work 4 hours, and 4 hours after you start working, I show up and I work 4 hours, and you work a total of 8, and I work a total of 4. At the end of the day, we're both getting a $100 check. Yeah. You would probably immediately say, I think I worked double what you worked.
Yeah.
I should be paid. You should be paid less than what I'm getting paid. So the reaction is a very justifiable reaction, I think.
Sure.
Human reaction. Anyway, go ahead.
Sure. Go ahead. Well, and indeed, it is a human reaction, and it is probably justified, but it's not the action that God requires of us.
Yeah.
But there was jealousy because the guy that worked an hour got paid $100, and the guy that worked 8 hours got paid $100, and it didn't seem fair. But the reality is that we're going to see success in people that we ourselves may think, well, that's not fair. They haven't been a Christian as long as I have, or they haven't been in church as long as I have, or they haven't been, fill in the blank. And the reality is it could develop some envy in us. It could develop some jealousy. And here are just really a couple steps to kind of work through that. If you're feeling envy or feeling jealousy towards someone. Kevin, what's the first way to do that?
I think it's winning in the 3-second window. We talked about kind of the 3-second window before on our past shows, and even on Sunday mornings at the church, is that that temptation, the initial temptation, we believe only lasts about 3 seconds. And so when the jealousy sets in your mind, you got to catch it right away. We're called to hold every thought captive. And if we're holding every thought captive, let me tell you, this is not easy to do this, because you think about how many thoughts cross our mind every millisecond, Yeah. And so when the thought of jealousy comes into our mind, we've got to hold it captive and say, no, I'm not called to be envy. I'm not called to be jealous. I'm called to be obedient, and Jesus doesn't want me to be envy or jealous. So I'm going to take this jealous thought, and I'm going to get rid of it. And I'm going to replace it with a positive thought. Well, I'm happy for him, or I'm going to pray for him, that type thing. I know when a jealous thought hits my mind, what I tend to do is I will pray for that person. I will either say, man, thank you, God, for blessing them, or Lord, just save them in whatever situation they're going through right now.
Yeah.
And I think so. It's winning in that 3-second window. It's getting rid of the bad thought. It's replacing it with the good thought, and winning in that 3-second window. Because if that 3 seconds of jealousy lasts longer than 3 seconds, you're in trouble. Then it's got you. So winning the 3-second window.
You entertained it for way too long.
Yeah, that's right.
I think the other thing, too, is that really perspective is a great way to overcome envy and overcome jealousy. You see, because a lot of times we believe that the reward or the money or the payment is what's important, to us. But Jesus is illustrating to us that it's not the reward that should be our priority. It should be the work, the harvest itself. And that we should rejoice with one another and learning to rejoice with one another because the work is getting done. And so whether it's us who have been, I know myself, man, I've been laboring in the field for a good 15 years now. And to see somebody come in who maybe just, became a believer a year or two ago, and seeing them, reaping a greater harvest than I may have reaped over the last 15 years, man, we can rejoice with them, because it's not about the reputation and it's not about the reward, but it's about the work that's being done in the kingdom. Now, I'm not going to tell you it's going to be easy to think that way, and I won't tell you that it's easy for me to think that way, but the reality is this is the way that Jesus wants us to think. He wants us to be rejoicing over the work that's being accomplished and not over who's getting the credit.
Well, and I think it's important to remember, too, is that we have a tendency, for whatever reason, to put our eyes on other people, and we have to keep our eyes on ourselves.
Yeah.
We're called. God has a specific purpose and a calling and a plan for us. For me in my setting, I'm called to pastor the Nazarene Church here. I'm called to be a good husband and a good father and a good friend and a good coworker, things like that. You're called to do ragamuffin and be the youth pastor and be a good husband and dad and coworker. All of these things that we're each called to do our individual ministries. And so our purpose is not against other believers. We're not competing. Our purpose is to build the kingdom through our own unique gifts that God has given us, through our own unique situations that God has given us. I thought it was really funny. Kevin Myers, we just finished doing a sermon series on one of his books, and Kevin Myers pastors this large church in Georgia, 12 to 15,000 people outside Atlanta, Georgia. And there's a story in his book that Kevin Myers says. Now, he's pastoring a church of 12 to 15,000 people. And you think to yourself, as a pastor, wow, that would be crazy to pastor a church that big. And but he tells a story that one day he went and talked to his mentor, who happened to be John Maxwell. And Kevin was having breakfast with John Maxwell. And Kevin Myers told John Maxwell, he says, man, I just don't get it. Andy Stanley's church right down the road, they're running 20,000 people. And we're running 15,000. They didn't have to go through all the same stuff that we went through. And he caught himself in what he was saying. It's like even in his unique situation, he's building the kingdom. God's using him. He's thinking about the other guy over on the other side of town that is building the kingdom too. And I think we have a tendency to do this, whatever our setting, but this is not our call. Our call is to do our best and to work hard and to build the kingdom. And one day we're going to be rewarded for everything.
Yeah.
But until that day, man, just focus on your own individual ministry. Don't focus on somebody else's ministry. You focus on what God's called you to do. You build the kingdom through you. You be humble, and you have the mindset of a servant, and you act in love and forgiveness and grace and mercy. And at the end, when you're on your deathbed, it's not going to matter. It's not going to matter what somebody else's ministries did. It's going to matter what your ministry did.
That's right. That's right. So we just want to thank you for joining us today. If you're experiencing hurt from another believer, first of all, pray that through. Let forgiveness just reign in your lives. Learn to go to that person. Don't gossip. Don't try to spread your hurt around, but really just kind of take it to that person and talk it through. Let them know, like, this is what you said that bothered me, and this is what you said that hurt me. And really learn to rejoice with one another in everyone's success. It's not about the reward; it's about the work that's being done. And so, I know this isn't an exhaustive how-to, but this is definitely something I think all of us needed to really hear. And so, when it comes to that 3-second window, the first time a thought enters in your mind, man, take that thought captive, and make it obedient to Jesus Christ. And as a result, not only will you be healed from the hurt that you have, but you'll start living in peace.
Well, I think too, just kind of in closing, it's important to remember that it's going to happen.
Yeah.
You're going to be hurt by another believer. I'm just going to tell you now. Jesus wouldn't have addressed it if he didn't think it was going to happen.
It's true.
So it's going to happen. So I don't want to say prepare for it, but Jeremiah has a saying, what you're saying, that nothing catches you off guard.
Nothing
surprises him. And I think don't be surprised when it happens, and just deal with it when it does. And hey, we will also invite you to visit us online at ChanuteNaz.com. And special thanks again to Chris Conklin for allowing us to host a show here and to come. And he's recording our services on Sunday morning, and we're just so grateful for the way that the Lord is using him to build the kingdom. And so you keep on keeping on this week, and we will see you next time.